This video is sponsored by War Thunder. On October 10th, 2007, the Orange Box, widely regarded as one of the greatest game collections of all time, was released. For many console gamers, it was their initial introduction to some of gaming's greatest titles. It contained Half-Life 2, one of the greatest single-player shooters ever made, Portal, one of the greatest puzzle games ever made, and at that point, a brand new multiplayer game that had yet to fully prove itself, Team Fortress 2. For many people, this would be their first step into the world of TF2. Though the game is usually thought of as a PC title, the console TF2 experience built the foundation for many people's introduction to not just TF2, but Quake-style shooters in general. And when these players first booted up the game, they'd be greeted with this, the title screen. A wide camera view of the second point of Dustbowl Stage 3. This screen would be the hub that directed many people to their very first matches of the game. It's iconic, a nostalgic piece of the game for many people, and yet, it holds a very simple secret. Despite how it looks, this is not Dustbowl. In fact, this map doesn't even exist. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. War Thunder is a tactically focused and historically comprehensive vehicle combat simulator built to give a complex combined arms PvP experience. There's a variety of detailed vehicles to choose from, with each one being carefully constructed to be as faithful as possible to their original counterparts. It's kind of incredible to just look at how detailed and specific each of these designs are. The developers have clearly put a lot of effort into making these vehicles as historically accurate as possible, which is really cool for someone like me, who's a bit of a history nerd. The selection is incredibly diverse as well, featuring over 2,000 vehicles from the past 100 years. That's over a century of history that you get to control in the form of tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships. Not only that, but there's an in-depth customization system that offers plenty of unique skins and stickers to be applied to your vehicles. The best part? It's completely free, and able to be played only on PC and console. Not just that, but if you download War Thunder today, you'll receive the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium status for your account, available only for a limited time on PC and console. So what are you waiting for? Download War Thunder today using my link below, and thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. This is Background 01. Despite it going unused in the PC version, it was still included in the files of the game at its launch, for reasons we'll get into later. You can still load it as its own map by typing either of these commands into the developer console. This map is what's known as a background map. This is a source engine term for, quote, 3D moving backgrounds that appear behind the menus when the game is first launched. These were designed for use in single-player games, specifically Half-Life 2, and essentially acted as vignettes or dioramas, a way for players to look at what the game was like before they ever got to play it themselves. In Half-Life 2, this manifested in small moving pieces of different areas in the game. They would have moving entities such as birds, combine soldiers, and helicopters, and would look a lot more alive compared to a simple screenshot. In the console versions of TF2, this was also the intended effect, though it wasn't nearly as developed as with Half-Life 2's background maps. Though the actual Orange Box game selection menu did feature a background map with classes moving about, this wasn't the case for the actual game in Background 01, which only had the smoke from the rocket and the control points icon as moving pieces in the background. Though it wasn't as advanced or developed as Half-Life 2's title screen, this was still a really soulful way to immediately immerse the player in the world of TF2. It's honestly a shame that they never put this into the PC versions, as it would be an awesome addition that would absolutely help capture the atmosphere of TF2 from the moment the game was loaded. But that begs the question, if it's not used in the PC version of the game, why can you still access it through console commands? Why is it in the files at all? Was there more planned for this map than meets the eye? Maybe looking deeper, we can find some answers. Let's look first at the Orange Box title screen compared to the actual map the title screen is based off of. This is a fun game of spot the difference, isn't it? There's a number of differences between this alternate version of Dustbowl and the real actual Dustbowl. Most notably, the big red team sign to the right of the rocket is missing, and the Cornwell logo is missing from the left silo. Less notable is the loss of this building to the left, likely removed to prevent it from getting in the way of the shot. Speaking of the camera, if we turn it to look behind what we can see in-game, we can also see that a bunch of unused assets have been preloaded, such as the character models for each of the 9 playable classes. These preloaded models and assets are odd, but I believe there's a pretty cool secret behind them, so we'll discuss them later. Right now, I want to focus on these odd differences between the OG Dust Bowl and this fake recreation of Dust Bowl. Why would the developers not just use a copied over version of the same map? Why have these weird differences at all? You might first assume that this reason isn't complicated. Maybe this is just an older version of Dust Bowl. Either these missing assets weren't completed yet, or they weren't added until later on in the game's life. After all, the orange box came out on the same day as TF2 itself did on PC, so maybe this was just what the earliest version of Dust Bowl looked like. But in looking through the map's update history, there's no indication that these visual additions were ever added after the game's release. I can't exactly find footage of Dust Bowl Stage 3 on the exact day TF2 released back in 2007, but as far as I'm aware, the version we have of the map today is essentially the same as the version that people were playing back then. Another potential reason, though less likely, is that the developers made this entire map from scratch and then just forgot to put these assets in. Believe it or not, the Cornwall logo on the silo isn't part of the silo's texture, it's actually a separate asset entirely, just placed over the silo as its own object. So maybe Valve just didn't remember to add this in when they made the background map. Though this could be the case, I find it somewhat unlikely. My guess is that, if the developers had just outright forgotten these assets, they would have added them back later on in the game's development, rather than leaving the background as is for over a decade. I think it's much more likely that the majority of these differences were not accidental, but put there deliberately as a way to reduce visual noise. You see, all the major assets taken out between Dust Bowl and Background 01 either have text on them or obscure the camera's view of the map. This commonality leads me to believe that they didn't want the background to be too visually noisy or cluttered, since there would be other text on screen that players would have to press or click in the menu's actual UI. It's very well documented that the developers making TF2 put a lot of care into making sure that the game is visually readable, and they likely didn't want to drop the ball with the title screen. But now that that mystery is solved, we're still left with these weird assets located behind the map, outside of the camera's view. What could these be for? Well, I'm of the belief that these were left here as a relic of TF2's development, something that probably would have been really cool, but was scrapped at some point during the game's production. If we look at the background maps used in Half-Life 2's title screen, we can see that these maps also have assets hidden behind the camera. However, the difference is that these preloaded assets are actually utilized for something, being animated in the actual scene during the title screen. I believe that these assets were set to be preloaded because the developers were initially planning to add a similar moving title screen to TF2, in not just the console version, but the PC version as well. But the idea was scrapped at some point in development, leading to the gradual evolution of the title screen into the one that we have today. This theory is supported by these behind-the-camera assets being comprised almost entirely of entities, objects that need to be animated or would be attached to characters who would be animated. This theory isn't foolproof, as it doesn't account for why other assets like the wall of film, the resupply cabinet, or the blue team's mega speaker are all loaded in as well. Maybe they were used for animation testing or something similar, but it's the one part of the puzzle I haven't quite figured out. Seriously, what are things like the spawn room clothing rack supposed to be here for? But regardless of what it was used for, it's now been left completely abandoned. An artifact of an idea scrapped into obscurity, never to be seen again. The earliest evidence I could find of someone discovering Background 01 was from 13 years ago on Reddit. A handful of people in the years to come would also stumble into Background 01 while messing around in the console, and I can't imagine what their reactions must have been. Actually playing in this map has this weird atmosphere attached to it, like you're peering behind the curtain of TF2's development and seeing something you aren't supposed to. It's almost liminal in nature, like a version of something you know, but with parts about it slightly altered from how you remember them. It kind of reminds me of old creepy video game secrets, like the Fun is Infinite screen in Sonic CD, or the Hell Valley Sky Trees in Super Mario Galaxy 2. It's these weird oddities that allow us to speculate on the development of some of our favorite games, going wild with theories about what could or couldn't have been planned behind the scenes. I think the mysteries of things like Background 01 are lost on a lot of gamers today, as the process of making games becomes more streamlined and safe. It's only in many of these older, less refined titles that you can find the joy of seeing something you weren't supposed to see, stumbling behind the curtain and learning that what you thought you knew about your favorite game really was never as it seemed. Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video and supporting the channel. Use their link in the description to download and receive your free bonus pack, only available for a limited time on PC and console. Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video.